Hello Mercedes lovers. Today's video, how to remove the alternator from a C230 compressor. You can see this is a two-door C230 compressor and has a 1.8 turbocharged engine. And today's task is to replace the alternator pulley. So, as first, to replace the pulley, you need to remove the alternator because it's quite tight down there and it's probably hard to do it while that alternator is installed. So, first of all, you need to loosen up the serpentine belt. So, as usually, you just need to release tension on a serpentine belt tensioner. Alright, so to loosen up or to take off the serpentine belt, you need to relieve the pressure on the idler pulley tensioner. So what you're gonna need is a Torx 60 and the long pry bar. Now you're gonna have to find where this Torx is inserted, and if you look down here you can see that is a little piece of the tensioner bracket shows up. So you need to reach under the serpentine belt, put your finger there right here in the at the end, and you're gonna feel there's a Torx there. Okay, you're gonna feel a hole. So now sometimes it's easy when you install just the socket first. Well, let's try that. So you take, okay, so the socket goes in. If you see, that's where the socket goes in. Now you can put the bar in. Come on. Sometimes, okay, so okay, so that's, and now when you have the bar, you're gonna push this way. So you push this way and you see how the idler moves, and that relieves the tension on the serpentine belt. And then there are 4 bolts that you need to remove, and then you pull the alternator from the car. I wasn't able to drop it down or remove it through the bottom, so I had enough room to pull it up through here. It's a little bit of a struggle, but in the right orientation, obviously you're gonna get it if you try a few times. It goes out. Removing the 2 upper bolts, you can get access through the top. Now to get to the bottom bolts, you're gonna have to jack up the car and slide under the car and loosen them from the bottom. So next, as you have the alternator on the floor, and I already kind of have it in pieces, so what I want to say, the reason why I pulled it out and started taking it apart, as I suspected that my bearings were making noise, and I was planning to replace the bearings. But in the process of disassembly, I realized that this alternator has a one-way clutch pulley, which looks something like that. And what it does, Basically it freewheels one way and then locks in another way. Well, the alternator that I have looks like this piece failed, and I think that's what was making this ugly rattling noise. So since I already taken it apart, I will kind of show how to do that, and then the second part, or the main purpose for this video, I'll show and explain how to remove the pulley from the alternator. So disassembly pretty straightforward. So to start with, you're gonna have to remove the back cover. So this is just one little screw, and you're gonna have to loosen the two nuts, then two screws, and you remove this brush holder kind of. Then this sits inside this little cover, so the cover comes off, and then you get to this piece. Now this is a little bit more involved, because what you're gonna see, you see these little wires at the end, and what it does, it crimps onto this starter wires. Now what you have to do is just with a small screwdriver, you can slide it in and just pry this wires kind of to release this ends that stick through. And when you do that on, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little I would call them hooks or something. So you do that, and then you remove this cover, because these wires, they kind of come through like that. So that sits, comes through, and then you can get to this part. Alright, so that's as a disassembly. Now if you want to remove the bearings, then you get access. So now you can pull this bearing and install a new one. In order to remove the bearing on this side, you have to put the pulley off, pull the pulley off, and that's where the interesting part comes. So to remove the pulley from the alternator, you're gonna have to buy a special tool. So the tool looks something like that. Okay, so it has this little bit that goes inside the shaft, and then there's the socket that goes inside the inner race of the pulley. Now also very important, you're gonna have to find which direction the pulley has to unscrew. So removing the pulley, like I said, you're gonna need a long breaker bar to hold this bit in place. Okay. Before you start doing that, you need to take the new pulley and check the thread. In my case, to get the pulley loose, I need to hold the inner shaft with the bit and turn. So I need to turn the socket counterclockwise. So make sure everything is in, it's all supported, and then you can just apply some pressure. Now obviously it went easy because I already removed it once and I just put it back together for the purpose of this video, but it takes quite a bit of force. The torque on that thread should be 80 Newton meters. So obviously, and that just unscrews this way. Now just to explain what's happening in here, because this was somewhat new for me. Usually the pulley would sit on a shaft and then there would be a bolt that's holding the pulley in place. Well, Mercedes or Bosch for some reason decided to go other way. They threaded the shaft over here and then the pulley just goes in and it just threads onto the shaft. Now if you want to go further and replace the bearing, so there's 4 screws on top, so you remove the 4 screws and you pull the plate and you remove the bearing out. So like I said, my bearings look and sound okay, so I'm not gonna replace them. I'm just gonna install the new pulley. So to do that, I'm gonna apply a drop of Loctite. Now I'm gonna set my torque range to 80 Newton meters. That's about 60 foot-pounds. To set it up. Okay, now that I got everything torqued, I can start assembling, and I find my yellow mark and I find my other yellow mark. So this goes like so. First we need to install this brush cover inside this back metal cover, so the orientation, this opening, has to point in between the 2 stands. So you place it in just about like that. Okay, now we need to put the cover on top, and the 6 ends that stick out has to pass through the 6 holes. Okay, and it's gonna be a little bit tougher. Alright, because now the bearing, okay, so that just slides in and the bearing slides inside the plastic cover. Okay, now just apply a drop, like a small drop of blue Loctite, sorry. Okay, so this is done. So now we put this piece, make sure that all these wires pass through. Alright, now I can put the brushes in. Alright, so now I need to take pliers and crimp all these wires. Alright, so I got all the wires crimped. Now this cover comes back. Alright, and we're gonna put the two nuts back. So thin one was from this side and the other one, the contact nut, was on this side. And that's pretty much what you need to do to assemble the alternator.